Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Nick.
And I'm Emily. We're really glad you're here with us today, because we're diving into a powerful question: can learning English be a form of self-therapy?
At first, that might sound like a stretch. I mean, when you think of therapy, you probably picture talking to a counselor or journaling your feelings, not struggling with verb tenses or vocabulary flashcards, right?
Exactly. But if you take a step back and really think about what therapy does, it helps you understand yourself, express your thoughts, release emotions, and grow through challenges. Well, doesn't that sound a little like learning a language too?
That's the connection we want to explore today. Because for many English learners, especially those learning as adults, it's not just about grammar. It's about identity, confidence, the feeling of being heard. And sometimes, it's about healing old wounds through new words.
We've heard from learners who say English gave them a fresh start, or helped them talk about things they never could in their native language, or simply gave them a new voice when they felt like they had none.
And there's something powerful about having that second language. It creates a space between you and your inner critic. A way to talk about feelings without being overwhelmed. A space to reflect and rebuild. That's therapeutic in its own way.
We'll be talking about the emotional side of language learning today, the side that doesn't show up in textbooks. The quiet victories. The deep reflections. The way English can help you grow not just as a speaker, but as...
So if you've ever wondered why learning English feels emotional, or why you sometimes cry while writing in English, or why speaking makes you feel strangely vulnerable, we're going to dig into all of that, and explain why it's totally normal. And maybe even helpful.
Let's get into it.
So, let's start with something really personal. A lot of learners tell us that English became a safe place for them. They say things like, I can express emotions in English that I've never been able to say in my native language. And that's so fascinating, right? Because it's not just about translation, it's about emotional distance and emotional discovery.
Yes, I've heard people describe English as their emotional language. It's like having this secret tool to unlock a new part of themselves. For example, someone might write in an English journal, I feel lonely, even though they've never said those words out loud in their native language. English gives them permission to be honest without fear or shame.
It makes sense if you think about it. When we learn a second language, we build it from scratch. We don't carry the same emotional baggage with the words. We're more free to experiment. And when we don't have the perfect vocabulary, we often get straight to the point, without overcomplicating. That simplicity can be really powerful for self-expression.
Definitely. And sometimes, when people are struggling with mental health, like anxiety, stress, or trauma, they feel stuck in their thoughts. But writing or speaking in English, even just to themselves, helps them organize those thoughts. It turns messy emotions into sentences, into stories, into something they can understand and reflect on.
There's a kind of control in that. Like, when you're overwhelmed emotionally, but you sit down and write, today I felt sad, it gives your mind something to hold on to. Even if it's not perfect English. Even if it's just a few words. You're releasing something. And that act alone is healing.
And it's not just writing. Even speaking to yourself in English, like saying, I'm okay, or I'm trying my best, can feel comforting. It's like being your own supportive friend. Language becomes a bridge to mental strength.
You know what else is interesting? The way learning English helps you build resilience. Think about how many times a learner makes mistakes, feels frustrated, gets stuck, and keeps going anyway. That's mental training. That's emotional growth.
Yes, yes, yes. Every time you forget a word and keep speaking, every time you get nervous, but try anyway, every time you fail and return the next day, you're not just improving your English. You're building emotional muscle. You're proving to yourself, I can do hard things.
Exactly. That's why we believe learning English can be a form of self-therapy. It teaches you how to be patient, how to show up for yourself, how to grow even when it's slow. And that mindset spills over into every area of life.
And the best part? You don't need a therapist, a fancy app, or even perfect grammar. Just a notebook. Or a phone voice memo. Or a few quiet minutes to say how you really feel, in your own words. In your own voice. In English.
And when you start doing that regularly, just checking in with yourself using English, it begins to shift how you see both the language and yourself. You stop treating English as just another subject, and it becomes something more personal, more alive. It becomes a mirror. A way to see yourself more clearly.
Right. And for many people, that's when motivation naturally returns. It's no longer about test scores or fluency levels. It's about connection. With yourself. With your emotions. With your growth. And that internal connection often leads to more consistent practice, because it's no longer forced.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of this process is that it doesn't require perfection. You don't have to be fluent to write a meaningful sentence. You don't have to know every grammar rule to express what's on your heart. Sometimes the most powerful sentence you write might be, "I'm tired today, but I'm trying." And that's enough.
That's so true. I've seen learners who struggle with confidence in speaking, but when they write in their journal, they feel safe. There's no judgment. No pressure. It's just a space that belongs to them. And over time, that safety expands into other parts of life. They become more confident not just in English, but in who they are.
And it's interesting how that self-expression can help with healing old emotional wounds, too. Like when someone writes about something painful in English, it gives them a little distance, a little space to process it without getting overwhelmed. It's like standing back just far enough to breathe and reflect.
Yes. And even small moments, like writing a gratitude list in English, or describing your day, or naming your feelings, can shift your mindset. It's almost like English becomes a new voice inside you. A calmer, kinder voice that helps you deal with everything going on.
I love that idea. English as a kinder voice. For some people, their inner dialogue in their first language might be harsh, critical, full of expectations. But when they switch to English, the tone changes. It's softer. More forgiving. And that can open the door to a whole new relationship with themselves.
So true. It's not about running away from your native language or culture. It's about discovering another tool for emotional growth. And when you use English journaling or self-talk this way, it becomes a quiet kind of therapy. A self-created space where you can be real, even when the world feels overwhelming.
And let's be honest, life is overwhelming sometimes. Learning English won't solve everything, but it can be something steady in the middle of chaos. A small habit that reminds you of your strength. A daily act of care. A reminder that you're still growing, even when it doesn't feel like it.
Exactly. And that kind of growth is invisible to others, but deeply powerful. You might not see results right away. But over weeks, months, and years, you're shaping not just your language, but your mental and emotional resilience too.
And that's why it's okay if you don't feel productive every time you sit down to study. Sometimes just opening your journal, writing a few lines about your thoughts or mood, even in broken English, is more than enough. It's not about doing it perfectly. It's about showing up with honesty.
Yes, and those honest moments add up. You might not notice it at first, but over time, you begin to understand your patterns, your habits, your emotional triggers. Writing in English can help you see those things more clearly, because it forces you to slow down. You can't rush through your feelings when you're translating them into another language.
That's such a great point. The slowness of it, having to think a bit harder about each word, can actually help you be more mindful. You start asking yourself, what do I really mean? How do I really feel? It's not just about vocabulary anymore. It's about clarity. Emotional clarity.
And sometimes the vocabulary you don't have teaches you even more. Like, maybe you want to express a very specific feeling, but you can't find the right English word for it. So, you go looking. You learn something new. And in that moment, you're not just learning English, you're learning about yourself.
Yeah, those little searches are like emotional excavations. You dig deeper because you want to express something honestly. And in doing that, you learn not only a new word, but a new part of your identity. One that's developing in English and becoming stronger over time.
And what's amazing is that over time, English starts to become part of your internal world. Not just something you use in class or in conversation, but something you use in quiet moments, when you're journaling, thinking, even talking to yourself. That's when it becomes powerful. Personal.
It also makes it easier to stay consistent. When English is connected to your emotional life, you don't need external motivation. You don't need to be in the mood to study. You write because you need to. You reflect because it helps. And English just happens to be the tool you're using to do that inner work.
Exactly. It becomes part of your self-care. Just like taking a walk, drinking tea, or meditating. Writing in English becomes a calming routine. Something that gives you space to process, to release, and to grow. And there's no right or wrong way to do it.
So whether you're writing full pages or just a few lines, whether you're journaling about your goals, your feelings, or even just the weather, it's all valid. Every word you write is progress. Every sentence is a step forward. Not just in language, but in emotional strength.
And I think that's what we forget sometimes, that emotional strength is a kind of fluency. When you can express your truth, even imperfectly, you're already communicating at a deep level. You're building real confidence. The kind that lasts. The kind that grows from the inside out.
And that inner confidence doesn't come from using fancy grammar or sounding like a native speaker. It comes from knowing that you can face what you feel, write it down, and give it a name. It's incredibly powerful, especially when English has always felt like something external, something academic. Journaling flips that. It turns English into something internal, personal, and healing.
It really does. And when you start seeing your own emotional progress written down, it's like having a mirror. You can look back and say, wow, that was a tough week, but I got through it, or, I didn't have the words back then, but now I do. It shows you your own resilience. You start realizing that you're stronger than you thought, not just in English, but in life.
And you don't need a perfect plan to start. You don't need a beautiful notebook or a fancy app. You just need a space, a quiet moment. Even if you only write one sentence today, that's more than zero. That's a connection to yourself. That's progress.
Right? And even if your sentence is something like, I feel tired, or I miss my family, that's real. That's you. And the more real you are with yourself, the easier it becomes to keep going, not just with English, but with everything else in your life.
It's kind of amazing how a small daily habit can lead to so much growth. And I think the beauty of English journaling is that it's yours. You're not doing it for anyone else. You're not trying to impress or perform. You're just being present with your own journey.
And that kind of presence, being fully with yourself while learning, is something that doesn't just make you a better English learner. It makes you more emotionally aware, more compassionate toward yourself, and more mentally balanced.
Because at the end of the day, learning a language is also about learning how to relate to yourself, to others, to the world. And journaling is such a quiet, beautiful way to strengthen that relationship.
Yes. And for anyone listening, remember, you don't have to write perfectly. You don't have to write a lot. Just write honestly. Trust that your words matter, even if they are simple. Even if they are just for your eyes. Especially if they are just for your eyes.
And let's not forget, journaling also gives you a safe place to make mistakes. A place where no one is grading you, no one is watching, and you don't have to worry about pronunciation or sentence structure. You can just express. That freedom is rare in language learning, and it's something we often don't realize we need until we give ourselves permission to have it.
Exactly. And when you take off that pressure, something magical happens. You begin to take risks with your words. You try new phrases. You write the way you think, not just the way you were taught. That's how your English starts becoming natural, because it's coming from a real place inside of you.
And the more you write, the more you notice patterns, not just in your language, but in your emotions. You start to recognize what stresses you, what excites you, what motivates you. That kind of self-awareness helps your English, sure, but it also helps your mental clarity. You start to move through life more grounded.
Yes, and journaling also helps you track your progress in ways that traditional learning methods don't. You might not notice how much your vocabulary has improved in a grammar book. But when you go back and read your journal entries from 3 months ago, it's all there. You see how your sentences have grown. How your thoughts are clearer. How your emotional language has expanded.
And that's such a confidence boost. Because so many learners feel like they're not improving. They feel stuck. But a journal is proof, real, visible proof, that they are moving forward, even when it doesn't feel like it.
It's also a place to talk back to the negative voices in your head. You can write about your fears and self-doubt, and then respond with kindness. That process is empowering. It turns your journal into a conversation, not just with English, but with your inner self.
So if you've ever felt stuck, overwhelmed, or unsure about your English journey, maybe it's time to try something different. Journaling isn't about writing perfectly, it's about showing up, being honest, and giving yourself space to grow without judgment.
Exactly. Your English journal can be your private teacher, your emotional outlet, and your personal progress tracker all in one. And the best part? You set the rules. You choose the words. You decide what matters.
So whether you write 1 sentence or 5 pages, whether you do it daily or once a week, just start. Start where you are, with what you have, and let your voice unfold.
Because every sentence you write, no matter how simple, is a step forward in both language and healing. You're not just learning English. You're learning you.
Thanks for spending time with us today. We hope this episode gave you new tools and a little more peace for your journey.
And remember, your story matters, in any language. See you in the next episode.